Hey guys, what's up? This is Wolf Airsoft Gaming, and today I'm going to be showing you the effects of different upgrades that you put in your gun and what to upgrade. Okay, so upgrading your airsoft gun can be divided into four easy, different little sections. There's accuracy, compression, power, and durability. Those are the four main groups, you could call them. So I'll first begin with accuracy. Accuracy can be divided into four subcategories: barrel, hop-up chamber, hop-up bucking, and hop-up nub. These all increase or assist with the accuracy of an airsoft gun. The barrel can be divided into two categories: tight bore barrel and wide bore barrels. Typically, HPA systems will have wide bore barrels and AEGs will use tight bores. Tight bores will raise your FPS, wide bores will lower your FPS. Wide bores give an insignificant amount of advantage over a tight bore barrel because it has more room for the BB to attain proper backspin. However, this difference is so insignificant that a lot of people can't even notice the difference. It also costs 4 times as much. So, with keeping that in mind, the barrel will increase your accuracy, your range, and your FPS if it's a tight bore, or decrease your FPS if it's a wide bore. Tight bore barrels can be found anywhere from $24.99 to $100, where wide bores typically start at $100 and can range up to $200. The hop-up chamber is what pushes the nub down to the bucking to contact the BB. So the hop-up chamber's job is to feed the BBs into the gun, as well as control how much pressure is being put on the nub to be forced down, contacting the BB. Upgrading your hop-up chamber can achieve better feeding, depending on if it's a current issue, and how precise your hop-up nub is being pressed down to the bucking. The hop-up nub is an extremely important part of an AEG that most people don't bother to touch. The stock hop-up nub on 99% of airsoft guns is a little cylinder made out of rubber material. Now this is what pushes down and makes the shape for what's contacting the BB. Now with the standard hop-up bucking or hop-up nub, there's one contact point at the top of the BB. Now this is very inconsistent and a horrible design. There are other types of buckings, such as H-nubs, which contact the BB at both sides, and a flat hop nub, which contacts most of the top of the BB. Flat hop is currently the, flat hop, R hop, G hop is what it was originally called. All of those different modifications, these nubs, form a much better and balanced surface that contacts the BB. So more surface area contacting the BB, the more steady the backspin's going to be, and the more range you're going to have. So upgrading your hop-up nub will achieve greater accuracy as well as greater range in your airsoft gun. The hop-up bucking's job is actually primarily an air seal. This can go greatly into the compression category, however it's an accuracy because all of these items are bundled closely together in one assembly in the airsoft gun. Upgrading your hop-up bucking can achieve greater FPS due to the better air seal, and can also give you better hop-up contact, because in summation, accuracy is one of the most important parts of an airsoft gun. However, it comes at a somewhat cheap price. The barrels can typically range for $30. A hop-up chamber can be used stock and doesn't need to be upgraded. However, if you'd like to upgrade to a full metal one, they retail for about $30. A hop-up nub can typically be found for about $10 or so, and a hop-up bucking for around $5. There's also many nub and buckings that come together as one set. Compression can be divided into 4 subcategories, just like accuracy. Compression is a major part of an airsoft gun, more so in DMRs and whatnot. This gives you good compression, can give you good and consistent FPS. Doing simple compression modifications can also raise your FPS. Compression's primary purpose is to compress the air at the same volume and same rate as any other cycle. So this is going to give you constant FPS, more or less, more FPS, and is really an inexpensive upgrade. There's a lot of different modifications you can do with Teflon tape and whatnot that basically creates a better air seal. Less air escaped, more air down the barrel, further your baby's going to go. So, first on the list is the air nozzle. This is basically what fires back and forth. This both loads the BB into the chamber as well as chambers the air to the back of the BB to be propelled out the end of the barrel. Upgraded air nozzles can be found made out of CNC and have better O-rings around them. These typically range for around $15, and upgrading your air nozzle can give you a better air seal in your nozzle as well as help feeding troubles if you have any. Next on the list is the cylinder head. This part is very important in compression and is where most is lost. The cylinder head channels all the air being pushed and compressed in the cylinder out a small hole to the air nozzle. Upgraded cylinder heads usually range for about $15. A good upgraded cylinder head will have 2 O-rings. Upgrading your cylinder head will give you better compression, more FPS, and a better air seal. Next on the list after that is the cylinder. This is the part that has all the air being compressed inside of it. There are different types of cylinders depending on where the hole is. If you notice, if you take a gearbox out of a gun, on the right hand side of it there's a little hole where you can see the piston. These are ranged for about 300 millimeter barrels. So with the cylinders, there are different ones depending on how long your barrel is. The farther the hole is back, or if it's completely absent, the more air it compresses to push down the barrel. If you have a full cylinder, meaning there's no hole, you have the most compression. Now, this also creates more resistance and wear. I'll get to that later, but essentially, if you don't need the extra compression, don't add it in. If I have a 455 millimeter barrel, which is commonly known as the longest barrel you can have in Airsoft, with barrel pushing it, with air pushing the BB all the way down the barrel, is 455 millimeters, is generally a full cylinder. That's how much air a full cylinder compress. If I have, and to give you an average, that's about a little shorter than an M16 barrel. If I have an M4 CQB that's 300 millimeters, I can use the stock cylinder. You don't need to upgrade your cylinder if you're not changing the barrel, generally. If you have a long barrel like an M16 and you still have that port on the side, you need to get a new cylinder if you want the maximum compression. This is going to put more air behind the BB, the longer the BB is propelled, and accuracy it has, and the more power that you're getting. Again, compression helps with FPS. So, cylinders are about $15 each. Upgrading your cylinder will give you either more or less air volume going down your barrel. Piston heads, next on the list. Another very important part. These are mated to the piston via a screw and ball bearings, and the piston head's job is to take all the air and compress it into the cylinder, pushing it through the cylinder head into the air nozzle. So the piston head has generally 1 or 2 O-rings, typically 1, and is being slammed forward in order to compress that air. So upgrading your piston head will give you better compression, more FPS, and another thing to note, the hop-up assembly can also help with compression, mainly the hop-up hooking like I mentioned before. Basically getting a better seal on the barrel, less air escaped, better compression. A fun fact, if you are testing your compression, all you need is the cylinder and cylinder head as well as your piston head. You take the cylinder, put your air on the tip of the cylinder head, and push the piston in. If you can push the piston all the way to the back easily, you have poor compression. If you put the piston in and you can't budge it at all, you can't push the two together, you have great compression. So you did something right. Alright, so next on the list is power. This is subdivided into 3 categories, and probably the simplest. So, the spring, the resisting force in the gearbox. What actually slams the piston forward? What compresses the air at what strength? These can range from M90s to M210s. Now, the M is actually a formula, but generally speaking, an M120 will give you about 400 FPS. An M110, lower, probably around 350, M100 around 320, 1 joule, and an M150 or something like that giving you a ridiculous 550 or 600 FPS. So this upgrading your spring will give you more FPS. Next thing, the motor. The motor will either give you more torque or will give you more speed. 2 different types of motors. One for torque, one for speed. If you want a higher rounds per second, you want a speed motor. If you want more FPS or higher spring, you want a torque motor. Generally, you can attain a good balance between the two. However, if you're going for extremes, that'll heavily depend on what kind of motor you get. Higher power spring, torque motor. Lower power spring, speed motor. Upgrading your motor will either give you more torque or more rounds per second, and in most cases, both. Next on the list is the battery. This is your gun's food. This is what it eats, so it's extremely important. You can get a higher power battery for more rounds per second, or more amps for the torque motor to draw, and it's more of a complex subject, but better battery, faster gun, stronger gun. And the last category is durability. Ever heard of the expression, with power comes great responsibility? Well, this is the responsible part of it. You can't drop an M150 spring. You know, you got a new gun, 300 FPS, whatever. You dropped an M150 spring in it. Oh man, it's shooting great, 500 FPS. And it breaks within a few rounds. Well, geez, I wonder why that is. That's because you put too much power without upgrading anything else. So, if you're upgrading your spring above anything above an M125, most of these upgrades to the section of some are absolutely necessary. So these all have to do with power. I'll start with the first one, the piston. This is what is attached to the piston head and what meets the gears. So if you have a standard one, typically these will get worn down pretty fast. And if you have a stripped piston, then your gears are cycling and your motor's cycling, but your piston isn't being drawn back and your gearbox isn't cycling. An upgraded piston will give you better strength or better speed. If you upgrade your spring above an M125, it's highly recommended that you get a full metal tooth piston. This is going to reduce the breaking of teeth and will give you a stronger piston that can withstand the force of an M125 spring or higher. Next is the spring guide. So the spring guide reduces the stress being put on the piston by absorbing some of it into the spring guide. This is also going to reduce a lot of wear on the gearbox itself. So upgrading your spring guide will give you more durability in the long run. The next thing are bushings. These are little things on the side of the gearbox that you can see that the gears sit in. These are normally ball bearing and reduce the stress being put on the gears to the gearbox shell. So this absorbs some of that. These normally won't make your gears run any smoother. However, it's to reduce the stress, just like the spring guide and the piston. The gearbox shell is next on the list. This is kind of a huge one. This is absolutely not necessary to upgrade. Don't get the wrong idea. Gearbox shell is costly, and if you were to upgrade one, you should get a CNC one. These run in the high 100s, low 100s, but they are certainly worth it. If you get a CNC gearbox shell, it will never break. Guarantee you. It doesn't matter if you put an 210 spring in there. You're shooting 800 FPS. It's not going to break at all. That's kind of where AEGs have developed to. They take a solid blocks of CNC and they mill it out, and those things tougher than nails. Everything else in your gun will break, but that gearbox will still be going strong. Upgrading gearbox shell will give you more durability. However, it's not necessary to upgrade most upgrades. And last, the gears. These are what mate with the motor and get the motor turning to the piston turning, or piston being pulled back, I should say. These normally don't break, however they can. You can get either torque gears or speed gears. Speed gears are obviously towards higher rounds per second, where torque gears are geared towards... funny, get it? Geared toward? Yeah, I'm not going to be a comedian. Are geared towards higher torque. This means that they're not going to break as easily. So it can handle the higher stress of a higher powered spring. So if you notice, all these things will not give you better compression, more accuracy, more range, more FPS, more rounds per second. Well, with an exception of the gears and the piston, but, generally speaking. These are all to assist with the stress on the gearbox. If you upgrade these parts to better parts, typically your AEG is going to last a significant amount of time longer. So, that about wraps it up for this episode of Wolf Airsoft Gaming. If you guys have any questions about this, this is more of a complex topic. I just try to brush up on it a little bit to give people more insight on what to upgrade. And if you want more power, you'll need durability. You can upgrade your accuracy and compression without any other obligation to parts and the effects of them. Accuracy, better accuracy and range. Compression, more and steady FPS. Power, more FPS. And durability, well, it saves you a lot of time and money in the long run. So, again, questions on any of these, please ask me, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can, and with the most correct answer I can come up with. And that's about it. So, I will see you guys in the next video.